Hey, Katie.
Hello, Neil.
How are you today?
Good. Brett, Brian, and Jeremy are all out today, so Carissa and I will be covering agenda items.
Sounds good. Hey, Carissa.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Paul, how's it going today?
Good, thanks. How are you guys?
Okay, I'm a little under the weather today, but I'm here.
Right on.
Did it go through?
Hey, Ashley.
Hello.
How's your day going?
It's busy. How's yours?
Yeah, I'm feeling that too this week. Looks like Kim is on as well. Hey, Kim. Excuse me.
Morning.
So, Katie, are all the guys at a conference, or did Carissa just decide to poison them all today, or?
Not me.
Oh, funny. Well, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. We can start off with a roll call. Let's see, we have, sorry, my screen just did something weird. Ashley Hunter's on, Paul, Kim, staff, we have Chris and Katie. Is there anyone I'm not seeing here?
That's it.
Cool. All right, well, welcome everyone. Just a reminder that this is a Zoom webinar, and it's also being live broadcasted onto YouTube. If there's any general public here, we will provide a time to comment on items that are not listed on the agenda. If you're calling in, let's see, use *9 on your phone to raise your hand to be recognized, and *6 to mute and unmute. Let's see. Oh, speaking of which, roll right into public comments. I don't see that we have any general public on the line, so we'll just keep moving right along. Let's see. Let's jump into financials. I think I believe these documents were sent out earlier for the board to review. I don't know if anyone had a moment to review those.
As you can see, we had a much better month last month than the previous month. So things are starting to pick back up quite a bit. Flower care has started. Those invoices went out on the 1st, so we'll start seeing more of those. And then we should start seeing more monuments as we can set them in the spring. I think last month we had 6 interments total, so way up from the previous months. You guys have any questions or anything on revenue from last month?
No, I don't.
I don't either.
Just one kind of question. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How many are these pre-sold, or are they new?
You mean the
Inter-
monuments or?
Well, both the interments and monuments.
The interments are not pre-sold, so those are taken at time of need. Monuments can be paid in advance up to a couple months, but we usually will take payment over the winter and then set them all in the spring. And then from spring to probably fall, we kind of take them as we get them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Chris, if they are prepaid, say over the winter, how do those financials reflect in the month that they paid or in the month that they end up being interred?
In the month that they paid for the monuments. And so as far as expenditures go, as you can see, we're about 75% through the fiscal year, and we're tracking really well with where we should be. We don't anticipate any overages, so we should be good.
I don't recall, if you don't mind reminding me, the funds for the new storage building, are those accounted for in this already?
Yes, anything that we've been billed for the storage building is accounted. That comes out of the capital reserve, so it's a little bit different. It's actually a little lower.
That's right. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
We will pay, continue to pay some for that storage building once we receive it. I think we put half down.
When you're talking about like our expertise and moving into DBG, I think.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sorry, I think you might have been picking up somebody who's talking behind me.
Oh, okay. I was like, I don't know what you just said.
That's funny.
Anybody have any questions on these or?
No, I think we're good. Well, Krista, thanks for delving into the financials with us. Katie, did you want to talk about the architectural updates?
Yeah, I did, and I apologize now if you can hear my dog snoring in the background. Snore today. So an update on the architecture. We have routed the agreement with Forefront Design for signatures, so we're still waiting on those. And they have requested a notice to proceed on April 11th, so we'll be issuing that. And then I do believe we'll get together again. I know Paul was in the last meeting that we had with Forefront, just so we can continue through this process.
And if you haven't seen it yet, attached to today's agenda packet is the contract with Forefront. Paul, I don't know if you've had a chance to look through this document, but I was wondering if you could help me understand a little bit about the phases. I get the phase 1 investigative design, phase 2 concept development, and then phase 3 is schematic design. What would we see in concept development versus schematic design? I guess I wasn't entirely sure of the vocabulary there.
Yeah. So in that, just in terms of the concept design, they're going to look at the historic preservation side of it, certainly. Probably deal with Elizabeth Johnson at the City of Missoula Historic Preservation Officer. They're going to do a code analysis. So something pretty typical for an existing building, want to investigate any code deficiencies in the building. So they'll be looking at that. And then they're going to break it down into two different scopes, it looks like. One is to analyze a new building, new build in its entirety. And the other is to say, renovate the existing building. So, and again, just in terms of conceptual development. So these will be very conceptual drawings. They'll be pulled together, rough drawings. They'll be pulled together showing how spaces could be rearranged or new spaces added to meet the needs in the existing building, or how the new building would meet the needs that are identified in the planning process. And with that, they'll do some site plan development with each kind of idea addressing that, the needs there. And a ROM, that's a pretty standard means of identifying costs, project costs at this early stage. You're basing it on a rough order of magnitude for an equivalent project you might have worked on, or project type that is similar, to use that as a basis for cost estimates.
Gotcha.
So then they'll do some reports back and a presentation. And in the schematic design, from the ideas that in the conceptual design, the board and the city will come to some ultimate conclusion. It's like, yeah, we want to either renovate this existing building because we feel that that's a better cost based on a rough order of magnitude cost and what you've provided us for schematic or conceptual design. It's like, that's the direction we want to go, or we're going to know new construction. And so we'll just be looking at those two elements, pick one, and they'll develop that in the schematic design process and kind of dig a little bit deeper into it in terms of making sure that the facility meets the needs, and then final recommendations, and then a final cost estimate for the report.
Gotcha.
And then
Okay.
another meeting. Yeah, I think this is a great outline. It's very solid, and I thought the fees were reasonable, so totally comfortable with it.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Paul, if you know, what's the total estimated time for it until conclusion?
Yeah, so they're shooting for the end of August for their final, but I think that's going to be contingent on when the city releases that the notice to proceed NTP, and you know, depending on how the firm works, how Forefront works, if they'll proceed with the notice to proceed without a contract, or if they'll want to wait for the signed contract.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Should we plan on the possibility of extra meetings to help meet the timelines then as they give us reports?
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, not unless there's some way that it corresponds to our regular meeting times.
Sure.
So, the two
Carissa, do you mind helping us keep an eye out on when these reports come in and how quickly we can meet to get them back, and if we need to have some extra meetings, I think we're more than happy to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
I just don't want us to be the delay in the process.
We can do that.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Katie, I'm sorry, I already forgot. I think you already said this, but who needs to finish signing off on the agreement?
Yeah, I don't know. Carissa is the one routing that. I'm not sure who it's left with, but we're definitely experiencing some issues, I think, with our electronic routing. So we're gonna push that to get it all signed this week, so I can make sure that that notice to proceed goes out Monday.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for following up, walking that through. Appreciate it. Does anyone have any other questions or comments in regards to the architectural plan here?
No questions for me.
Kim, did you have anything you wanted to talk about here?
Nope, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Well, let's move on to Stories and Stones updates, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so we'll need the board's input. The cemetery has some concerns about language used in the event, especially after the whole issue with the booklets. Essentially, the cemetery currently doesn't write any of the scripts or review any of the actors' performances prior to the event, and many of the actors don't write down their scripts. So when we spoke to the coordinator about implementing some kind of system or mentioning something to the volunteers about language use and terminology, she expressed a very strong desire against the city overstepping and doing anything that could limit the actors' freedom of speech. There's been some discussion around some alternative options to Stories and Stones, especially since the event hasn't been very profitable and over the years has declined in popularity. We obviously want to make sure that we're pursuing an option that invites people to the cemetery. It's easily accessible, but also cost effective. One of kind of the most popular ideas was an interactive app with audio tours recorded by voice actors. So we could write up the scripts, record them one time, and then have them forever. One benefit to going with this type of option is that it would create content that we could easily manage. We could tie it to the GIS system. We could even add more interactive options like bird, plant information, interactive directions, scavenger hunts. Another idea was to take the historical signage and put QR codes on them so that they could be linked to the app so that people could walk up to them, snap a photo, and be able to actually hear the audio of that particular individual. So we kind of want your guys' feedback, what your thoughts are, and how the best way you'd like us to proceed.
Are we considering doing the app in lieu of Stories and Stones at this point?
Yeah.
And what would the costs associated with the app be?
On initial development, it would probably be fairly expensive, but if we did take into consideration over the years of not doing Stories and Stones, that event roughly runs us about $3,000 a year. So it would eventually pay for itself probably within about 5 years.
Got it.
And just thinking about this, so the app would be active all the time. So there would be no set weekend, set time that for that public engagement component.
Yeah, and we could link it to the bike tours. We could have events around it, but it would be active all the time.
Mhm.
And are you
I'm-
saying it would cost about $15,000 initially?
Yeah, we'd have to get some actual quotes, but that just kind of on a base research app development can cost roughly around there, but it depends what you do, who you get your developers are. So those aren't exact figures. We'd have to, get some actual quotes and really look into it, but a rough estimate.
It just seems that we got our money going towards this planning of the cemetery as a whole, and all of a sudden now looking at $15,000, that's not on top of the list.
Yeah, and that's just one option.
I really like the creativity of the options. I think that sort of brings in a new age and might bring some younger users and community involvement in the cemetery as far as the app goes and the QR codes. I know sounds like it's could be expensive up front, but maybe getting some quotes and looking at those hard numbers, I'd be interested in seeing that, especially in comparison to the attendance for Story and Stones in the past maybe 5 years, and then we can weigh the pros and cons. But I really like the creativity behind it.
I would agree with that idea. You know, the app, I see a lot of appeal to the app, and Stories in Stone was always an opportunity to actually get the public who never comes out to the cemetery onto the cemetery. So I think that I would ask that maybe that we consider another option or an alternative to continue some sort of public event that engages directly with the public. And that could be, there are multiple things that go on. Like you mentioned, Carissa, could be bike. I don't think they call it Bike Walk Bus Week anymore, but you know, alternate transportation month or whatever it is. And Historic Preservation Month would be another one, as the Elizabeth Johnson HPO works out the National Register nomination for the cemetery. So there might, and Women's History Month is another one that might tie into this. So I'm not opposed to the app, but I'd like to encourage the idea that we maybe look for other opportunities to bring the public in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could always do something where we showcase certain individuals, you know, if it's a historic month, or like you said, Women's History Month, we could do something with that. I mean, the options are pretty much endless if we kind of pivot to something more along these lines.
And is there one staff member that would manage, sort of oversee the app or the content or the scheduling of those events?
Typically that would be the admin, so that would be me.
Okay.
One
is
thing,
there something that you have time to take on and interest in doing?
it depends how complex the event is. If it's something where we can reuse certain pieces of it every year, on the front end of it, it might be a difficult, you know, initial setup, but like we have the signs from the bike tour, and so we can always just update those, and that's much easier when you kind of have it already half designed.
Right, so. Sure.
Carissa, I love the idea of the app. I think it's, I really like how we can integrate different audiences into it, as you were saying, including, you know, links to the wildlife or the arboretum there, the bike tours. I think that's brilliant. I would also agree with Paul, and that I really like the idea of some of these alternative public events that Paul was mentioning. I think that makes a lot of sense. It'd be interesting to see what we could plan out for the next year or so. But the other, you know, I had the same thoughts that Ashley had, was that, you know, what resources do we need to manage these, like having alternative public events, manage the app. I don't want the staff to feel overwhelmed by having to do these things as well. So I guess I'm at a point where I would say it'd be great to know get some estimated costs, and then if you and or whoever else could chime in as far as you know, what the administrative overhead is going to be for these types of things, and is it doable on your end, or do we need to think of something else or other things? I think that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. One thing too, though, is that the volunteer coordinator is at a point where she either needs to dive in or step back. So I'm not sure how you guys want to proceed with that, if you want to put it on hold temporarily and revisit, or what your kind of decision on that is.
So the informational booklets are certainly still under review, correct? We don't have finalized copies of those with edited language.
Yes, that is correct.
Kim, Paul, Ashley, do you have any thoughts on postponing or stepping back from Stories and Stones until we have some more concrete ideas or thoughts, or if we want to do it, how do we get those booklets done so that we can have them as resources?
I thought in a prior meeting, we had decided to postpone this year's Stories and Stones. Is that right?
I think what we had
Or tabled it?
talked about was sorry, forgive me, my mind is drawing a blank, but what I remember is that we were going to table it until we had more information about getting the booklets back from the people that were going to do some editing on those.
Hmm. I think maybe an update by the next meeting to see the timeline on those booklets would be good, if it's a possibility to get it done in time or not. Otherwise, I would be in favor of postponing it for this year and allowing the coordinator to step back for a little bit as we kind of check out the options for the app. I think it's an important event, and I really like the interactive quality of it. I don't think you just don't get that with apps, but they both have pros and cons to them. And I know it's been difficult to get actors and get everything lined up, and declining participation and COVID and all of that throws quite a bit into the mix. But I'd just like to know if the booklets could be done in time for this year before making that decision, I guess.
Yeah, I can definitely check with the communications team and see. I know they weren't 100% sure, but let's see if we can get an update on that.
And a lot of good work has been done on that. So I think getting that language amended is necessary.
That does kind of circle back though too with the language used from the actors.
Yeah.
What your guys' thought is on that.
I have not heard very many of the presentations at Stories and Stones because I've worked it. So I don't recall hearing any language that was like totally inappropriate. But I do think that we need appropriate language. It's a city sponsored event. And I would like the cemetery to be a place that's welcoming to people. So I guess I'm not entirely sure what the concern is on their end around using appropriate language, or if that's something that can't be done. I don't know. I'm a little confused there at that point. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. From what I understand is that they're not willing to send us scripts at all to look at. Chris, am I correct on that?
Yes.
And that is definitely a concern, especially with these booklets. We should be able to review those as a city event. That should be important to us. Like everybody should be allowed to have their, story if they are being an actor or actress in this. But we need to make sure that we're covered.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. I'm sure the communications department would like to have these scripts reviewed as well, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
So Katie, just and not to put you on the spot, but just that idea with that in mind, if the scripts were reviewed, then presumably they would be acceptable to use in Stories and Soon?
Yeah, that is correct.
But there's your impression is there's some reluctance to release those back to us.
Yeah.
And could you frame that in any way? Like what's like, is it because the language is so bad or because they, I don't know.
I think they just want to protect freedom of speech for the actors. But again, this is a city event, so we have to make sure that, you know, what the city is putting out there is acceptable. So we just want to look at them first, just to make sure.
Sure. And I'm all in favor of that idea that they're reviewed and, you know, in accordance or compliance or whatever the word is there with, you know, the city of Missoula and kind of the Jedi philosophy, I think is what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I'm totally support that. It would be great if we could get it, you know, even if we didn't get them all released, if we were able to say, here's a list of, you know, 12 or 14 that I'm being generous that we know we have actors for, could we at least get those released so we could proceed with Stories in Stone and this year and let the public know this is the last year that we're doing it live and just kind of give them a heads up and kind of celebrate that and the end of that live. And maybe by then we'd know whether it is the end or if we're going to go to an app or not.
Kim, you've done Stories in Stones for a long time. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I think Paul's idea is good. I must have misunderstood though. Didn't somebody say that there weren't any scripts, that the actors just sort of did it to their own fashion?
Currently, there is nothing that has been submitted to the cemetery previously. The volunteer coordinator did mention that some people will write them down, some people will just memorize and kind of go impromptu. So.
Yeah. I mean, if we could get those and get them approved, that I think that would be great to have it go through, but you know, I don't know if there's even 14 out there that they have actors for.
The other thing that I think would be something to keep in mind, you know, if something is written down, even though there may be a little bit impromptu, that being ADA compliant, making sure that everybody, if they're hearing impaired and then doesn't have anything to read because the script is impromptu, I worry about that as well. So we want to make sure we are looking out for everyone in this, so everybody can come and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think the ADA compliance is a good thing to think about. You know, we've had people say in the past that they have a hard time hearing some of the presenters, definitely. I don't know, I guess I'm at a point where we need to ask if they would be willing to submit scripts, not in a way to change the content, but just or change the stories, but to ensure that you know, the language being used is appropriate. And if that is a barrier, then I don't know that we can do Stories in Stones this year. How does everyone think about that?
I agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree as well.
Carissa, do you mind? I think you've been coordinating with the volunteer coordinator. Can you relay that information to the volunteer coordinator
Yeah.
for us? That'd be
Yeah,
great.
definitely.
Okay. I hate to not do Stories and Stones. I think it's a great event, but it seems like we have a number of barriers that we need to work through before committing to it this year. So and I don't want to keep that volunteer coordinator on the line while we try and decide. So if we can get them to submit some scripts, great. If not, then I think we have to move on to other things and let them move on to other things as well.
Perfect. I will get in touch and let everybody know.
Cool, thank you. Well, we've managed to make it through today's agenda fairly short order. Does anyone have anything else that they wanted to bring up today? Okay. Does anyone mind if we adjourn then?
So moved.
Second that.
Perfect. Then let's adjourn for the day.